So this is a video of my equity action plan, and I know in our plan we had to include 3 steps that we were going to incorporate as a teacher beginning our career. And the very first thing that I wanted to do was to bring awareness. And what I mean by that is to make sure that we provide knowledge of and respect for the various cultural traditions and languages of students in the classrooms. We need to be able to acknowledge that every student comes from a different background. We also need to, have a general cultural knowledge about the child and adolescent development and about the ways that race, class, language, and culture sort of shape school performance. And like stated in the Myers article, 84.2% of educators said that they approve of the idea of inclusive education, and 86.8% said that it is personally important to them to address the LGBTQ issues, and as teachers, personal values and beliefs have a strong impact on what content they will include in their classrooms through the official and hidden curriculum. So like stated, bringing that awareness in classrooms I find is very important. And like stated in the Myers article, every teacher out there wants to talk about, lesbians, gays, and, every other culture, race, ethnicity, and all these things. But it's hard for them to sort of bring to the table because of the idea of fear, or because they're not sure as to how or what parents would be offended by talking about this. And I know even in the class, we had a discussion about this in one of our classes, and, the idea of how parents are going to even react to this. So this is definitely something that is a topic that a lot of parents would resent to, and it's hard to sort of implement into our curriculum, into our education, and to have students be aware of it. But as teachers, we should be mindful that, this idea of pride that we celebrate in our world is something that, it has a meaning behind it. And it's not just something that we just celebrate because we need to, it's because we need to bring that awareness. And that would be one of the very first steps that I would do, is to bring that. And this could be, general topics, ask a student, how they feel about this topic. Just have class discussions itself, they could just start from that, and just to let them have a sense of idea of what it is, let them start to think how they feel about this topic. These kinds of things are appropriate, and of course, it's not something that we have to deeply engage into, because I know some students may feel uncomfortable, but it's something that is good to just sort of bring in class discussions and just sort of talk about it amongst peers and how they feel about it. What do they think about pride even? We could just bring up the topic of that. So that would be one of my very first steps. The other step that I would definitely incorporate is the idea of being inclusive. And what I mean by this is, like stated in this book that we also talked about in class, there's this diagram here that I'm always very connected to, the idea of disability, race, and religion, and how they're all interconnected, and having students sort of understand that. And in order to educate all our children, both in the curriculum and instructional practices within schools and classrooms, we have to be sensitive and also understand the individual strengths, backgrounds, and understand, students do come of different races, students do have different religion, some students do fall under these categories, but how we have to incorporate all of this is one of the things that, I find is very important as a teacher. And so primarily my focus of teaching and learning should be just helping students develop that critical thinking and problem-solving skills. So understanding that, we do live in a society today in Canada, very multicultural, that all of this is very much interconnected and they're not separate. So creating that idea of inclusivity is very important. And this book obviously instigates on the idea of equity and inclusivity, and how we should incorporate some guidelines and policies. And even in the Teaching Human Rights book as well, where we looked at multiple case studies, we also saw that, there are a lot of cases where students do feel neglected because they have a disability or because of their religion or because of their race. And we saw that and we read about it in pretty much every week when we looked at different case studies. And even in that book, it talks about, how in different various subjects, so such as language or media or math, or even social studies, just bring up the topic with the students and just have them sort of sit there and brainstorm what they think about discrimination, what they think about race, what they think about religion. Have them sort of bring that, cultural, responsive pedagogy that we just talked about as well. Have them understand that it's student-centered learning, and so have them incorporate their ideas, and work your lessons based on that. And I think as a teacher, for me, I would definitely want to make sure that I incorporate this kind of idea that we are all working together in one society, and this is not separate. So bringing that inclusivity is very important, and how I would personally do it is just, incorporating lesson plans, having the students itself brainstorm ideas about how they feel about this topic. So that's how I would do it. And the third thing, that I would include, or the steps that I would take as a teacher, is to bring diversity. And what I mean by this is bringing adult role models into the schools. Students need to relate to adults in their schools through common experiences, background, and culture. Students should be provided with a rich era of adult role models for children, and always include adults of color. And this kind of reminds me of the article where we talk about white privilege. We have to step away from that idea and just sort of bring in different cultures into the schools, and have their grandparents or their parents come in, talk about their culture, talk about their ethnicity, where they come from. Every child nowadays, you can see there are a lot of schools out there that are very multicultural, and we need to be able to bring that idea of multiculturalism. And, obviously some parents may be resistant to this idea. There may be grandparents who may not want to participate in it, or sometimes even language barrier can be a problem, but we have to work through that. And I think talking to the administrator or to our principals or to other teachers or even to our students itself, what they feel about idea of diversity when it comes to schools, and bringing that in. And I think role models are the best way for students to understand their culture personally, and also for them to visually see that this is the way their culture is, this is the way someone else's culture is, and seeing that and understanding that, culture isn't just something that, you say this is your background. It's more than that. A culture is more than just a person's identity. It's who they are, more than that. And I think that's something that, a lot of students don't really understand. And I think bringing those role models into our schools and having, children see that diversity and being able to live within that experience is something that I think would, further discriminate things like bullying or, other problems that occur within schools. So to sum it up, awareness, inclusive, and also diversity are the three things that I would definitely bring into my classroom, and I would definitely want to talk with other teachers, with my principals, and sort of incorporate that idea that these three things are very important. We have to be aware, we have to have the students be aware, we have to be inclusive, and we have to create diversity, and we can do that just by being those role models for our students. And here are my references. And this concludes my video.